Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Anime Theory, where we're going to go over an anime that's likely one of the most convoluted shows in all of existence. By the way, this video will contain spoilers for the anime Serial Experiments Lain. Whether or not you want to watch the show beforehand relies on whether you want to go through the show itself, which is interesting to be sure, but you might also find it kind of boring, depends on what you enjoy. If you want to check it out, a link will be in the description, where you can check out the first episode on Funimation's YouTube channel. Still, I figured I'd warn you. Anyways, Serial Experiments Lain is possibly one of the most convoluted anime I've ever seen. Unlike most anime where the plot is easy to grasp and presented in an easy way to understand, Lain just keeps giving you more and more questions. It presents everything in a strangely trippy and vague way, and tends to answer the questions much later in the same way as well, with its whole trippy visuals. It's a nightmare of a series to untangle, trust me. Not to say that it wasn't interesting, because it really was though. I actually enjoyed taking notes and trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. Still though, it could have been just a bit less weird sometimes. I guess that's just Lain's style. Anyways, this anime is one I've gotten several requests to cover. Heck, my real-life friend Troy even said he'd like me to make this video because even he couldn't understand this series. In fact, that seems to be a common pattern with people who watch this show, and I completely understand why. This series is not content with merely telling you what's going on. It wants you to figure out what the series is about, which I can respect. Still though, that's why I'm here today. I'm going to dive in and try and explain what is going on in Serial Experiments Lain. So don't worry if you didn't understand it, because I'm going to tell you my explanation for the meaning of Serial Experiments Lain. Also, I'm going to say this now before I get complaints. Yes, this show has a plot meaning and then a deeper symbolic meaning. I'm going to try and go over both, but the second part will likely be stronger in the deeper meanings area. Well, what are you going to do? Also, I'm going to say that this is going to be a two-parter. Before you attack me, let me just say that there's so much going on in this show that there's virtually no way to explain it in a normal length episode. And this stuff gets really complex after a while. So instead, I'll make it a bit easier to digest by making it a two-parter. I figured I'd warn you earlier than Pat usually does, so you don't feel betrayed at the end of the episode. Alright, let's dig right in. So the story begins with a supposedly typical girl named Lain. The story indicates that she's just a normal human. Yeah, alright, I'll let you stick with that for now. Anyways, she's extremely shy, having few friends beyond this group here, with the only true one of any note being Alice. Lain also has, she has a family? Being weird with this stuff because, as I explained, it will be covered in a second part, comprising of her mom, sister, and dad, and her dad's name is Yasuo if you wanted to know. The story begins with a girl named Chisa who ends up killing herself. Now normally when you die, you can no longer contact anyone in any way. Chisa, however, ends up sending messages to everyone at the school, especially Lain, who she manages to talk with through email. Well, actually, I don't think it's Chisa, but we'll talk about that later. Shh. She tells Lain that though the body is dead, she's actually perfectly alive and functioning. Not in a body way, mind you, because yes, as previously mentioned, she's dead, but in The Wired. For those of you who don't know, The Wired is like a super souped up version of the internet. Though you find out what it really is later, in the beginning it's shown to be a concoction of several different forms of media, from phones to navis, which are basically computers, and allows the user to subconsciously connect with other people through it. Now that I think about it, this show predicted the borderline obsession we'd have with the internet. I mean, it's not even subtle. This is what the internet has basically become. Wow, that's kind of scary. Creepily enough though, Chisa seems to be inviting her to join in. And ironically enough as well, Lain becomes surprisingly interested in navis, even asking her dad for a new one. To which he responds, yeah, typical Lain moments. Anyways, after this, there seems to be an indication that her friends have seen Lain in a club called Siberia, despite the fact that Lain couldn't seem to recall that ever happening. After receiving the computer from her father, it's set up and she later does set out to Siberia with her friends. Unlike the other Lain lookalike, however, this Lain is much more reserved, quiet, and shy. Her friends dismiss the other Lain as being something else, but as you can probably guess, this isn't really the case. This show wouldn't bring this up if it wasn't significant to Lain as a character. With this kind of show, it'd be borderline ridiculous if they emphasized this aspect without it meaning anything at all. Anyways, at this club, a man under the influence of a drug called Excella ends up killing several members of the club. Just telling you so I don't get asked, Excella speeds up your sense of time and serves little purpose to the overall story beyond that one moment. Lain, however, has her personality do a complete 180, turning into what almost seems to be a completely different person. After telling the man that everyone is connected in the wire, he ends up killing himself. Now, what was the significance of this? I mean, why would she do these things? Well, this scene is meant to warn you of two things. First of all, this is echoing the previous episode's message of the Wired being much more significant than it initially seems. It's made clear in these two episodes that not only is the Wired significant, but it's also likely connected to the real world in some way. The second thing this scene is trying to accomplish is trying to tell the viewer that there are multiple things off about Lain. I don't mean just in a personality way either. From the first episode, this show makes it almost blindingly clear that we don't know anything about Lain. It goes out of its way to make sure that, unlike most anime where the main protagonist is shown with their thoughts and everything, we don't actually get to hear Lain's thoughts. The show is trying to warn you from the beginning that we don't know a single thing about Lain, and thus the idea of her being a split personality shouldn't be too much of a shock. She literally transitions into a completely different Lain mid-scene. There's not much else needed for evidence, it's right there plain to see. It's likely that Lain has dissociative identity disorder. As you'll see throughout the series, Lain is able to change between personalities pretty often, which actually links into that completely different issue that the show predicted. In essence, this other version of Lain, often called Lain of the Wired, is basically an online personality. She's playing a character. Now, anyone who's been on the internet for a while knows what this means. Almost every person on the internet changes their personality when they are on the internet, even if it's just in incremental ways. Yes, there are the extreme examples like AVGN and Filthy Frank who are playing a character, but this also affects people in tiny ways whether they realize it or not. Heck, even I become a bit nicer and less loud on the internet. The difference is that Lain's other personality is one that she has little to no knowledge of. This isn't unusual for people suffering from dissociative identity disorder, as most people suffer from it are completely unaware of their other personalities. They simply think that they have spotty memory, not that there's an occasionally completely different person that takes over their body. I know that some seem to believe that Lain actually does know of the other personality, and is just going out of her way to hide it, and honestly, I can think that's true as well. Lain does seem to lie quite a bit, so it's understandable. I, however, don't think she's lying at all. I think she's completely unaware, and at any time that she's been hiding something, I think it's actually Lain's personality changing. Perhaps the lying isn't coming from the innocent Lain, but the Lain of the Wired. As the day continues, Lain manages to hear voices talking to her without explanation, telling her mildly strange things. She later receives a chip of unknown importance. When seeking out someone to explain its use, she runs into a kid that not only knows what the chip is, but claims to have seen Lain previously in the Wired. As he explains, however, it's a completely different Lain than the current one, which just confirms that Lain of the Wired is actually, or at least for the moment, only fully working in the Wired and Siberia, which is connected to the Wired anyways. And Lain's bizarre adventures continue as she uses the chip to expand her computer's overall power and usability. Like seriously, this isn't even a computer anymore, it's a monster. Oh, and there's that personality change again. Over the next couple days, it's made clear that there's a stronger bond between the Wired and real life when the children began dying in a game called Phantoma. It's not all that important plot-wise, but it's there to show you why there's a deeper connection than the characters seem to insinuate. Not only is it trying to show you that the two worlds are connected, but it also seems like a vague warning about getting too sucked up in this other world. Also, the Knights of the Eastern Calculus are introduced in this episode. They're sort of like how the internet jokes about the Illuminati, but in this world, they're much less of a meme and more of a real-life problem. They're shown to be a prominent hacker group with a possible connection to some kind of higher power in the Wired. We won't be talking about them until the next part, but I figured I'd mention them right now just to give you an idea of what these things are. What they aren't is the guys in this black car who are part of a completely different group. After Lain continues to be bothered by their presence, she screams at them to go away, which actually causes a force to break their goggles. Huh, Interesting choice to suddenly show her using an ability well beyond the powers of a normal human. That wasn't totally intentional, was it? It totally was. In the next episode, several children are shown waving their arms at the sky. While you may initially believe that this is just another one of those trippy Serial Experiments Lain moments, they are actually waving at something. Lain. Not the Lain that seems like a 14-year-old, but Lain of the Wired. Even her friend notices, but chooses to say nothing about it. How is this possible, though? I mean, Lain just has a disorder. Then how is she able to do this, then? Well, combining this with the goggle-breaking scene, it's clear that Lain has some kind of special ability. No one else does this kind of stuff, just Lain. It's another one of those trying to get you to mistrust Lain kind of scenes. Still, I'll be getting more into what's going on in this scene later, as it's kind of stuff that doesn't get introduced until way later in the series. To finally reveal what's going on, or at least kind of reveal it, Lain ends up at Tachibana General Laboratories with the two guards, where after fixing some kind of computer, she's shown another version of herself taking out people trying to become a knight. Why is this scene important though? Well, think about it. This guarantees that the two Lains are able to separate in some way. The Lain popping up on the screen earlier could be deemed as a Serial Experiments Lain moment, but this right here is unavoidable. As expected, Lain begins to crack a bit. I mean, who wouldn't after realizing that there are more of you? However, Lain suspiciously can't seem to recall anything about her life. Almost like her life is a lie. She then turns into Lain of the Wired again, showing now that the personality doesn't just change online anymore. And now the viewer's left to wonder what the heck is actually going on. And sadly, this is where I'm gonna have to end the episode. I know, it sucks to end it off right as stuff gets weird, but trust me, there's a lot more to cover. Who are the knights? Who is the voice that continues to talk to Lain? What even is Lain? And most of all, what is really going on in the world of Serial Experiments Lain? Well, I guess you'll have to just wait and find out. I hope you're excited. Also, as usual, I've got some cool fan art to show off. First of all, oh my gosh, look at this. Dude, Sick Puppy Lol actually drew me a Serial Experiments Lain inspired fan art of me. Dude, this is amazing. This is so well done, and plus, look at the Megune poster in the corner. Dude, I love this. I love this so much. Also, I can't forget this art by Kyoko Moma. Even though it's just kind of a little bit more simplistic than the last one, it's still really awesome looking, and plus, I like the art style. It looks like a little bit more chibi and cute, and I just enjoy it in general. If you have any fan art to show me, why don't you send it to my Twitter? Then I'll show it off on a video. Hey everybody, if you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I mean, hey, I've got other videos to watch. Why don't you check out my Sword Art Online theory, or my video on the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. Both of them are pretty good. I especially like the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya video. I think it was pretty good. Also, why don't you check out this video that's a cover of Serial Experiments Lain's opening, because I actually really do like the opening. And this is a pretty good cover of it, so I hope you enjoy that. And yes, part 2 will be coming soon. It's just gonna take a bit, because, dude, this is really, really hard to cover. This was the simple episode. This is the one that was easier to talk about. So yeah, I hope you're excited, because the next one is gonna be literally crazy. And there's not really that much else to say besides see you later.